My name's Melissa Wilmot, and this is the story of my husband, Jeremy. It's been a rough road. He passed away 3 years ago, and trying to get answers and trying to get help from the coroner's office has literally been an exhausting nightmare. I still don't have answers. I don't know that I ever will. I was hoping, because I have 3 children, that we kind of need to know what happened. When my husband first passed, that day, I gave them the paperwork from the hospital. I gave them everything. Whatever they needed, they got. And come to find out that it was turned into Moylan, and he lost it. They can't find none of the paperwork. They just completely, almost like, didn't even care that he was hospitalized before he passed. What happened, we moved up here at the end of August in 2016, and within 2 days of being here, my husband got sick. He was bringing up, brown fluid, and nobody could explain it. He ended up actually being life-flighted. He was in complete organ failure. He spent pretty much the month and a half pretty much the whole time before he passed away, he spent most of it in the hospital. I got really no answers from them, but he'd come home, he went back in, he came home, he went back in. When he came out the last time, it was on October 3rd of 2016. We came home that night. He seemed good. The next day we were taking a walk outside and talking about how we were going to celebrate his birthday. And everything seemed good. He seemed happy, and he seemed healthy. And he sat down, he had dinner with us. We were laughing. He went to bed about 11 o'clock. And then when I came downstairs that morning to check on him, he was gone just that fast. When everything started, the deputy coroner that was here, when he looked at the discharge paperwork, he couldn't believe the results he was looking at. He honestly said it seemed like he was a ticking time bomb almost. And as upsetting as that was, it kind of, fueled my fire even more to find out, well, then what happened? And then everything just kind of spiraled out of control from there. On October 5th, I got a call from the deputy coroner that night. It was like 8 o'clock, and the first of several different diagnoses came through. They told me that they did the virtual autopsy, and my husband's heart had exploded. They thought he took a heart attack. They were supposed to call for the pathologist to come down to do the autopsy the next day. Well, that didn't happen. They didn't come down for 2 days. We had to push back the viewing plans. We had to reschedule his funeral because he was getting military services down in Indiantown Gap. So we had to readjust everything because they didn't call in time to get her to come down. And then after they did, by the time that the funeral home actually got my husband, he was already starting to bloat from the gases. That he didn't look like himself, he was, and it was hard to have to see that, to know that he laid over there with nobody, with nothing. And it's just from there, everything seemed to kind of go downhill. Trying to get in touch with the coroner's office to find out what was going on. Phone calls were ignored. They didn't want to call back. They kept promising they were going to call. I didn't actually get to meet Dr. Moylan until almost the middle of November was when I finally had the first meeting, the first of several meetings. And he couldn't answer my questions. We're sitting there asking him, okay, well, what about this? Well, he was reading off of the autopsy report. Well, there's no medical history. He just spent a month and a half in the hospital, and you guys knew this. I gave the paperwork. Well, we don't have the paperwork. Well, according to the coroner paperwork that I have from the deputy coroner, he took you the papers. You have them. Well, they must have got lost. How do you lose medical records from a person? How do you, I just don't understand how that happens. But he couldn't answer any of the questions. Well, I didn't do the autopsy. Well, okay, but you're the one signing on the death certificate. You're going to put down whatever you think it is, but yet you weren't there to see anything. You didn't do really anything with him except for a CT scan. And that drew a conclusion of my husband had a heart attack. And then from there, after that meeting, it went for, weeks, just weeks, going back and forth, trying to find out about the death certificate and what was going on. Did they get the medical records? They kept telling me the hospital wasn't sending the medical records. The hospital's saying they didn't get requests. Then, I don't know. It was a nightmare to get anything done. I got the VA records that I could. I turned them in. They lost those copies of paperwork. It's amazing how he feels like it's okay that the stuff just disappears and that there's nothing wrong with it. It surprises me. But then we went from he took a heart attack to no, there was nothing wrong with his heart. We think it was cystic fibrosis. So then I had to have my kids test it. I actually have one that tested positive. But we're running into where there's no genetic information on my side, but we can't get the samples to test for my husband. They didn't want to release them back then, and they still won't release them today. And it makes no sense. And then we went to pulmonary hypertension, and then we went back to cystic fibrosis, and then we went to the stuff that he put on, this idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which means we don't know, is pretty much what he put down. We don't know. And he didn't care. It just seemed like he didn't care. And every time I tried to talk to him, he would stutter. It's like he couldn't answer the questions because he didn't know. He wasn't the one that did anything. And then, we trying to get answers. We asked for a second opinion for somebody else to do it. Well, he told me and my mother in one of the meetings he was going to send him up to Dr. Bindi. Okay, great. We went for 3 months with him telling us that he was sending them. Bindi was going to do it. Everything. Called Dr. Bindi's office just to find out. They didn't call us. They didn't tell us they were sending anything. They haven't sent us anything. And we don't even work with him. We're not working with him right now to do any of that. So how can you sit there and lie to somebody straight to their face that you're going to try to help them and then turn around and not even do it? It just makes no sense. When I finally found another pathologist to review them, it took us, again, a week and a half before it got sent down. And he pretty much contradicted everything Dr. Moylan said, even with just a little bit that he had. And he can't even give me a definite cause of death because when the autopsy was done, they didn't take the samples like they should have because they didn't have the information that they needed. I got a final death certificate before they even got the medical records. And it took me almost 6 months to get that. It's like, how can you sit there and say that you're doing good for the community and for the people when all you're doing is lying? You don't want to do your job, apparently, because you didn't investigate this at all. You can't, how can you sit there and say he died of this when you didn't have medical records? You didn't have nothing. And then to lie to somebody, and you know, my kids need to know if it's something genetic, if it's just something that might show up later in life. We need to know for their sake. And I can't get them to do anything for me. I'm literally, between all the phone calls and text messages and visits over there, I think for like the first almost 8 months nonstop, I was either on the phone or over there almost every other day trying to get answers. And it was always the same thing. They're not available. We'll call you back. And nobody ever would. He would never want to do it. Finally, after the medical records came in and we went over, I set up another meeting. I finally got another meeting with him. And because it was after we got the report from the other pathologist, he literally sat there at that conference table and asked me what I thought should go on that death certificate. And I said, how do you ask me that? I want to know how my husband died. That's what I want put on there. Well, tell me what you want me to put on there, and that's what we'll go with. I said, I want to know why my husband died. That's what I want to know. Can you tell me that? Well, I don't know. We'll research it and get back to you. We'll revise the death certificate. So then he did. He changed it from the idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, and he put on there the aspiration pneumonia, which is one of the diagnoses that the other pathologist found. But it still doesn't answer the questions as to why his organs failed. It doesn't answer the questions as to what actually happened to my husband. It just seemed like he was doing it just to appease me, to get me out of there, is exactly how it felt. I felt like I was getting pushed off. They didn't care. And it's not everybody over there, because a lot of them tried. And it just seemed like every time they went and tried to talk to Moylan, they got stonewalled. And I've got text messages from 3 years ago where it's from the deputy coroner that was trying to work on it. He's not giving me an answer. He's not available. I'll have to check back in and get back to you. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't understand. I'm getting frustrated just like you are. We should have something by now. Nobody could ever give me an answer. And it's like every time you try to talk to them over there to try to get Moylan to do anything, he would blow it off. It was, well, he's seeing other patients right now. Okay, well, how can he, you know, I get he's trying to do 2 jobs there, but how do you pick and choose? Well, I'm not going to deal with you today because I'm just going to deal with this. How does he get the choice to not do his job as a coroner if that's what he's there to do? You know, and it just doesn't make sense to me. I could never understand why we had to go through so much and still not get any answers. I've tried getting the samples for the genetic testing with my kids. I was actually told this past January, when the hospital was trying to get them, we don't know where they are. We don't know if they're still here. The person who has that key isn't available. Well, Dr. Moylan doesn't know. They have to find the guy to come down and look for them. He'll call you back. I tried to set up another meeting with him to find out. Won't even take my calls. Won't call me back. Won't set up a meeting. Nothing. So I don't know if the samples are still there, but how you could get rid of something after only like 2.5 years, I was told he's not allowed to, because technically that's still my property, being the next of kin. That's my right to be able to have access to that. And for them to sit there and say that they purged it and got rid of it, when were you going to tell me? You know, when was anybody going to tell me? When do I actually get the full autopsy report and the pictures and the reports and the slides that I can take and have this reviewed, so that way these doctors can start looking to help my kids? They won't even give me that. I can't even get that. And I'm the next of kin. And it's like they don't care. They really just don't care over there. He doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't want to deal with the people. It's unbelievable. I just, I don't know. With Dr. Hoffman, though, I actually got that name from a family member who has worked with him and really said that he was like the number one on top of his game. So we called him, and he said that they would get the samples, we could send them down, get everything done. He would be more than happy to look at it. So I took the information over, signed all the release forms, and then I get told that, well, we're working on it. A week and a half goes by. They still haven't sent them out. Well, we're going to go ahead and FedEx that down there to them for you. We're going to pack it up and put it in a box and mail it. And it's just like, that kind of blew my mind that you would want to do it that way. But then, you know, once the information got out there, and once, you know, it was told to other people in the office over there of what was going on, you know, Deb stepped up and Deb took it down there. She came up and transported it herself to get it down there for us. And if she wouldn't have done that, it probably wouldn't have happened. I probably would have still been fighting with them on it, because it just seemed like every time it was always an issue trying to get them to do anything. It really was. I don't get how you have to fight so hard to get answers when you're supposed to be grieving and taking care of your family. But yet you have to stop, put everything aside, and say, okay, I have to grieve tomorrow because today I have to find out what happened. Today I have to fight with them again. I have to make another 5 phone calls. I have to make another trip over there. And it just doesn't seem right. You shouldn't have to do that. And like I said, it just seems like Dr. Moyley just doesn't have the compassion or the care to want to help anybody. He really doesn't. Why didn't you actually investigate? Why didn't you wait for the medical records? You knew multiple times, you were told that he was in the hospital. Multiple times. Why didn't you look at the medical records? Why didn't you have it reviewed and actually investigate it to find out what happened to him? Why is it so important for you to just put whatever on the death certificate and get it over with? Why won't you help us? Why? That's what I want to know. Why? I don't know.